Welcome to Slow Night, Ancient Tales. Tonight we bring you Suffering, a classic short story by the renowned Korean author Lee Hyo-seok. Set against the backdrop of intricate human relationships, rumors, and unspoken emotions, this piece captures the essence of classic 1930s Korean literature through beautifully crafted prose. If the interactions and complexities of the day have left you weary, allow yourself to let go of those burdens right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the soothing rhythm of this classic tale wash over you. Let us begin our journey into the tranquil night. Suffering author Lee Hyo-seok. A was a young colleague in the same editorial office. When what she had thought of merely as an expression of deep friendship through his usual kindness crossed the line of friendship and suddenly turned into a confession of love, Yura could not help but feel bewildered. Thinking that his kindness up until now was suddenly like a decorated trap, Yura hastily began to put her guard up. The stronger his attitude and hints became, the colder she behaved. This, instead, earned his unjustified resentment, ultimately leading to a severance of their relationship. A left the company shortly after, but whenever Yura frequently heard baseless slander and rumors about herself, she had many depressing days, wondering if it was the result of A's false rumors. On the one hand, she felt sad and pitiful about the man's jealousy and narrow-mindedness when he was rejected. However, since he was someone who had already left the editorial office under the same roof, as their interactions gradually faded, her relationship with A was completely cleared away. But what was even more persistent and bothersome was B. B was also a colleague in the editorial office after A had left. Yura usually treated him with respect, serving him as a senior, as he was a middle-aged gentleman experiencing domestic troubles and a once brilliant fighter in the past. Yura was left with no choice but to keep at a distance this senior she had respected. The motive, of course, was brought about by that senior. The senior used ideological guidance as a pretext and ultimately tried to open the door to Yura's heart. However, the key he possessed did not fit Yura. The door of emotion cannot be opened with ideology alone. The emotion of love enters through the eyes, so before conquering Yura's eyes, bringing wisdom more beautiful than jewels would be of no use. Yura came to find his goodwill of guidance rather bothersome. It was unspeakably cringeworthy for Yura that B used essays in the monthly magazine as an excuse, employing various hints and metaphors as a tool for courtship. However, what was even more unbearable than that were the lengthy letters that occasionally flew in anonymously. In them, B pleaded his love with lingering words. Eventually, it even reached the point where he came to visit Yura in person. When things got to this point, Yura had no choice but to maintain a firm and cold demeanor. She couldn't help but overtly and clearly reject a person who ignored even hints and acted so brazenly. However, this caused the exact same situation as with A. Various slanders and rumors, seemingly B's doing, rained down on Yura. One of the figures in the rumors was C. Yura's colleague, whom she introduced to me on the train at the station when my wife went down to our hometown. What could be called a companionship between Yura and C began right around the time of the squabble between Yura and B. It seems Yura had told me several times before that C was the person who always shielded and protected her whenever there was an issue within the company. Since B and C were colleagues in the same room with their desks side by side, it was a natural course of events that B's jealousy and criticism became concentrated and exaggerated regarding the relationship between Yura and C. Yura's story was about this much. However, rumors about Yura and the others kept reaching my ears through the mouths of other people as well. For some reason, Yura did not take pleasure in the rumors with C. I think Yura's weak character is revealed here too. It's not like she wouldn't know that rumors are inherently scandalous and as baseless as the wind anyway. So regardless of whether the truth is more or less than the rumor, wouldn't it be more conscientious to affirm things as they are and let things run their course freely as her heart desires? Society doesn't have the audacity to interfere even in an individual's love life when the conflict of interest is Placing an individual's love life on the chopping block to butcher and criticize it does not necessarily guide that person's conscientious life. Yura had no need to be modest about or sacrifice her private life in the slightest against a world full of jealousy and unreasonableness, much less towards me. Even towards me, Yura glossed over her relationship with C and occasionally even made sacrifices. There was this incident. One evening when I suddenly asked her to go see a movie, Yura readily agreed, but there was a somewhat worried expression on her face. However, of course, she did come right on time as promised. Feeling puzzled, I went to the cinema with her. There, unexpectedly, I discovered C sitting alone. I couldn't quite observe whether Yura also had an expression of suddenly discovering C or not, but the atmosphere between the three of us was certainly awkward for quite a while. Thinking about it, Yura's worried expression when she heard my request seemed to be the result of thinking about her appointment with C. However, if she had made an appointment with C first, wouldn't it have been enough to simply reject my request outright? Rather than walking shoulder to shoulder with me down the street and awkwardly meeting the promised C at the destination, wouldn't it have been more proper to refuse my appointment and simply go with C from the beginning to enjoy a few hours? Was there a need to be so modest toward me that she would instead obliterate an important part of her life? I cannot understand Yura's state of mind in such a situation. It wasn't just this time. Leaving aside the times we frequently walked the streets or visited tea houses, even when we went to see a dance recital or some writer's manuscript exhibition, she went out of her way to go with me, but there was something awkward and uncomfortable in Yura's attitude. One day, after walking the streets until late at night, we stopped by a department store. With Yura's recommendation as well, I was intending to buy a necktie. I only had a number of them, but didn't possess a single decent tie. "Let me pick one out for you," Yura said, and she easily picked one out from a waterfall of wide neckties. It was a luxurious yet by no means vulgar tie, with red stripes faintly mixed into a black background, harmonizing with the body and fitting my taste. The more I wore it, the more it suited me, and the more I liked it. At a cafe, a waitress with a good eye praised its elegant color tone, using the adjective splendid. The more I heard such remarks, the more I couldn't help but admire her excellent sense and refined eye. I was essentially decorating my body by borrowing a part of Yura's refined taste. Couldn't the case of walking the streets with Yura be explained in that way too? At the very least, I think Yura essentially served the role of a necktie that adorned my body on the streets. For Yura, wouldn't it have been more proper to enrich her own more important life rather than serving as a bodily adornment? If it was because she extremely hated baseless rumors, was there a need to specifically guard against the rumors with C of all people? Regarding the fact that a female newspaper reporter who frequently witnessed Yura and me walking together on the streets used it as material to mock Yura, Yura talked about it to me cheerfully with a smile, without any sign of awkwardness, saying that she instead sharply rebutted her. One day, when Yura came to my place and was chopping meat on the cutting board for dinner, my friend came to visit. If a rumor were to start, there was no better coincidental opportunity than that. Yet Yura herself did not show much sign of worrying about it, but I cannot know the reason why. I can only see it as Yura putting the cart before the horse and failing to distinguish between the trunk and the branches. The more she worried about the exposure with C, the more things went wrong and went wildly astray in unexpected directions. OB's exaggerated jealousy and actions, an unexpected incident finally occurred centering around this relationship. There was another person who had Yura in his heart, and that was D. He was a man who miraculously stayed alive, wandering the streets doing nothing after completely dropping out of the activist front. Was spreading street rumors and creating gossip his job? Past comrades mostly considered him dangerous and kept their distance, except when trying to use him. On the surface, he too always slithered around Yura's side like a shadow, using guidance as an excuse. Of course, he and B were past comrades, but since he considered B a rival in love over Yura in his own heart, he secretly envied B's maneuvers toward Yura and was waiting for a day to use that as an opportunity to trap B. Right then, a comrade appeared, and it was E. D somewhat respected E, if it could be called respect, as E was one of the top executives of the legal movement at the time, and B, being a dropout himself, was in no position to hold his head high before him. E abruptly jumped into the tangled web of this incident when C's presence had not yet clearly surfaced and only the relationship between B and Yura was distinct. Thinking that she would be useful if guided well, in other words, to guide Yura, was the first reason for E's brave interference, and the second purpose was to harshly reprimand the dropped-out B's actions and set his path straight. After hearing all about the relationship with B from Yura and me, E and D frequently met in my room as well to devise countermeasures and set up tactics. I had no need to spare occasionally providing my single rented room to those trying to protect Yura. Sometimes, including Yura, the four of us would end up meeting in that small room. One morning, when he had gathered his nerve and the time was ripe, D finally rushed to the magazine company, threw away all past friendships and loyalties like an old shoe, and valiantly appeared before B as a naked hero. He pointed out B's flaws, exposed his actions, and mercilessly pushed the utterly shocked B into a corner. He thoroughly hacked him to pieces using precisely investigated materials as weapons. Yura must have been nearby as well. The editorial office was suddenly turned completely upside down by the unexpected storm. B and D finally engaged in violence with each other. Chairs flew, fists clashed, and the editorial office turned into a scene of utter chaos. Watching for the right moment, E rushed in. B was completely taken down, helplessly losing his strength from the unexpected attack coming from an unforeseen place. The rumor spread widely through the streets, and right or wrong, a handful of mud was slung at B's face. E's desire to completely crush him socially was achieved to some extent, and D, having struck down his rival in secret love, also felt quite exhilarated in his heart. B took time off from work starting the next day. Even the matter of his resignation was discussed. Of course, his hatred toward D and the others was immense, while his schemes against Yura also made him grind his teeth even sharper. As the central figure of the incident, Yura herself felt ashamed to go to work and often stayed away, but due to the deep goodwill of the editor-in-chief, her resignation was strongly dissuaded. After this incident, the relationship between Yura and E's group definitely grew closer. That was E's desire from the beginning, but they met often, either alone or together. Only heaven knows the true colors of E's real intention to guide Yura. Meanwhile, B's attacks against Yura became even sharper and more aggressive. His full frontal attack was concentrated on exposing Yura's relationship with C. This was Yura's sore spot. Eventually, one incident gave birth to another. Not only was the hidden life of Yura and C exposed, but even the detailed inner circumstances regarding C came to the surface. D himself would occasionally spy on Yura's lodging and speak of his speculations regarding her life with C, and E, for his part, used various things he heard as material to carefully dig into and monitor Yura's life. In the midst of this, due to the curiosity and maneuvering of F, G, H, and various other figures with whom Yura had even the slightest involvement, C's most painful wound was also laid bare. Given that C had a devoted wife who had even supported him during his student days, wouldn't it have been more meaningful for Yura to ignore the rumors, despise public opinion, and actively lead a life of substance? Rather than becoming the darling of clumsy public opinion and a good citizen, had she instead become a devil of life, Yura's livelihood would have shined even brighter. Is such advice merely my useless paradox and nothing more than a helpless sentiment? That concludes tonight's tale. While the characters in our story navigated a stormy sea of emotions, I hope this time has brought a gentle calm to your mind. Whatever noise or worries the day brought, let them softly fade away into the quiet of the night. Tomorrow awaits with a fresh and peaceful start. Slow night, ancient tales will always be here to keep your nights tranquil. If this story helped you find rest, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Sweet dreams and good night.